Taoiseach, is the government willing now to change Irish agriculture and food policy based on the latest report today from Eat Lancet Commission, which is setting out the science so clearly on the need for the whole world to change so that we can feed all 12 billion people, so we can improve our health and make sure we stay within the planetary limits that we risk tripping over? I grew up at the food pyramid. We all know for years that we've had to reduce our amount of beef and dairy, but now today I see a food pie that's very clear. Half our food coming from vegetable, fruit, huge amount of plant-based protein. I'm glad that it's still saying yes, there will be obviously dairy and beef and other foods products, because I eat meat too myself. But I know that for my health and for ethical reasons we need to change. It's not right for Ireland to follow a completely alternative policy to the one that's set out here. Our Foodwise 2025 plan is saying, oh, there's going to be a massive increase in meat consumption around the world, and we should get in there. We should massively expand our beef and dairy and pork and chicken industries to benefit from this. We should be out there in a world where the growth in meat consumption is going to be an opportunity for us, when the science is clearly saying the exact opposite. That market is going to dramatically shrink and has to. And I think we need to change food policy. We had Macron in yesterday, and we were in agreement with them that for the future of Irish farming, this obsession Fine Gael have in supporting industry and big business doing well out of it, they're the only ones doing well out of this obsession we have in meat and dairy and poultry and pork expansion. It's not the Irish family farm. So sticking to the current massive expansion in meat and beef and dairy, I think actually provides the opportunity for us to start paying Irish farmers better, to actually give them a more secure income by diversifying away from just big international beef and dairy markets, which is where you are leading them. But more than anything else as well, is there not going to be a hypocrisy that if we have the Taoiseach saying, oh yes, we're going to cut back our own meat consumption, but as a country we're going to be out there selling and expanding as much as we can, when everything we know now from science and from health is that actually we all need to adjust our diet, and we will all benefit from that, and Irish farming can and should and will benefit from that. So will you change Foodwise 2025 and recognise the reality? You wrote yesterday to the Climate Committee saying that you want to be a champion and that we want to be centre of the process of doing what's right. You cannot do that in one letter and then not recognise the need for us to change our entire food and farming system. Do you agree with this science? Do you agree with where they say the world is going to go? And will you change Irish government food policy on the basis of that?
Deputy, I don't think you're giving a fair reflection of what the food policy in Foodwise 2025 actually is. You talk about massive expansion in beef production. We are not planning for that. We're planning for a sustainable and controlled expansion, particularly in the dairy industry, but we're not talking about significant expansion in terms of beef production. What we are, though, doing is recognising the fact that the Irish food industry, in terms of its survival, and indeed family farms right across this country, survive in terms of their income on the back of the reality that Ireland is a very significant food exporter. And we continue to explore and develop new markets. But the way in which the Irish food industry contributes, in my view, to a global challenge of climate change is to show how it can be done to at the lowest carbon footprint. And we are already achieving good results in dairy in particular. I think we can do better, though. We are already doing reasonably well in terms of how we produce beef, in terms of the carbon intensity of those production systems, which are by and large intensive grazing-based systems. But we can do much better in that area too. And that is why we are spending 300 million of taxpayers' money on a beef genomic scheme to actually improve the genetic integrity of our herd, to ensure that our beef animals become more efficient, to ensure that we can slaughter them earlier, to make sure that they are emitting less methane, primarily in their life cycle. That is why we have asked all food producers in Ireland who are exporting to sign up to the Argent Green programme, so that actually this journey is a transparent one. in terms of how and where they source water, in terms of the carbon footprint of the production systems as a whole, as well as the actual carbon footprint of farming on beef farms, which Ireland is a global leader on. So if you're going to talk about the food industry, Deputy, and yes, the food industry has a responsibility, as do farmers, in terms of the climate change challenge. And we do potentially need to look at radical solutions in terms of how we farm, how we produce food, and also our lifestyles. But please, if you're going to talk about that, talk about it accurately, in terms of what we are actually doing and actually achieving as a very significant food exporter in the European Union, and as a country who is determined to show the way in terms of the beef and dairy product that is going to be demanded, regardless of changing patterns, that will be demanded in the future. If Ireland, through its technology and production systems, can show others how to produce food in a much more carbon efficient way, then surely that is the global contribution that we should be looking to make, rather than actually shrinking our food industry and our farms as a result.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Deputy Ryan.
What's happening? We've been working on this now in real detail in the various committees of this House. We heard McInerney yesterday saying they're very impressive, saying yes, we're actually on target to meet what the plan is, which is an 85% increase in exports, primarily in dairy and beef, as you say. And all the good things that's happening, and it's not all bad in Irish farming. There's a lot of good farming going on, and what those young people said yesterday is absolutely true. The young farmers of the future are going to be the green young environmentalists for this country. But what we also know as a fact that despite all the good things and all the genomics and various different methods, Teagasc and your department of Agriculture, are projecting for us to increase our emissions from agriculture. You cannot do that. You cannot go out there this line, we're the most efficient, we're the best, and sell whole hundreds of thousands of tonnes of fake baby milk to powder to China, pretend that you're solving the global problems. If we're serious about the Sustainable Development Goals, and if we're serious about climate emissions, we're going to have to do more. But beyond that and further than that, bringing it back home here, yes, we're a big food exporter, but also a massive food importer. And I'd love to see to give Irish farming the chance and a fair deal where you're not buying a packet of kilo carrots in the local supermarket for 49 cents, which is one of the things that needs to change to allow us, as I said, diversify and start growing. We can grow a whole range of different crops and start paying farmers properly for that. That could be one of the changes. And also for Irish people to improve our health and to improve our country and our landscape and be part of this. That's the sort of changes. You cannot be the one side being the massive increase in dairy and meat exporter.
Thank you, Deputy.
And not do what the Lancet and what other scientists are saying we need to do. We need to change.
Tánaiste to conclude, please.
Deputy, I agree with you on a lot of that. We do need to change, and I would contend that we are changing. And we need to probably accelerate that change in many areas. We have, for example, put a lot more money into organics, which, by the way, is probably less carbon efficient in many ways, but still I think needs to be a very important part of our food mix. We have many, many more Irish indigenous food companies now providing innovative products into local supermarkets than perhaps we've ever had before. But we are living in and operating in and building an industry in a single market across the European Union. And so there are things we need to do collectively as a European Union to protect the share of the consumer price that primary producers actually get. And we need to continue to drive efficiency as well as encourage a change in lifestyle, in terms of diet, in terms of how we travel, in terms of where people live and how they work, and so many other areas that are part of the 2040 plan in some ways, part of the Foodwise 2025 plan in other ways. I am not suggesting, Deputy, that we somehow absolve agriculture from its responsibility in terms of climate change. Nobody in government is advocating that approach. But what we are saying here is we need a vibrant industry that keeps families employed in rural communities in Ireland at the same time as doing something significant from a climate change and emissions management perspective through agriculture, which is what the Foodwise plan is trying to do.
Thank you. That